Welcome back to Ruff Talk VR. Dive into your weekly dose of in-depth game reviews, exclusive developer chats, and the freshest scoop on MetaQuest and the VR universe. Today, we're in good hands with the dynamic father-son duo D-Scruffles and Stratus, ready to decode and discuss all things virtual reality.
It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's a ball trimmer sent from space. Our friends over at Manscaped have been working night and day to bring you a below-the-waist grooming experience like none other with the brand new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. We're talking about a next-generation trimmer with interchangeable blade heads for whatever shave your mind can imagine. Upgrade your grooming game to the Ultra Sphere this year by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with the code RuffTalkVR. High tech for low places. Manscaped. Every man knows how scary it can get when going for a close shave below the belt. That's why I trust Manscaped for all my sensitive areas. Inside this package, you'll find the star of the show, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. Their 5th generation trimmer features 2 interchangeable next-gen skin-safe blade heads, a standard one for taking a little off the top, and a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. We also have dual LED spotlights to provide contrast on multiple skin tones, 3 length setting combs, and oh, did I mention the trimmer is waterproof too? No more wet shaving down there. Count me in. Take it on the go. Manscaped has you covered. This puppy comes with a travel case and even a travel lock feature to avoid any accidental powering and weird looks in the airport. This right here is on the cutting edge of cutting pubes. Upgrade your ball trimmer and your life will follow. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code RuffTalkVR at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code RuffTalkVR at manscaped.com. I can promise you've never seen a ball trimmer look like a spaceship. Get yours today from our folks at Manscaped.
Hey everyone, before we kick off the show today, I just want to give a quick shout out to the following podcast supporters. Thank you to Asim, Crispy, Jake, Earth Witness, Amelia, and Shoes. Thank you all for your continued support, and of course everybody who listens as well. Don't forget too that you can support either directly through Patreon or even on YouTube. And you can get cool perks like, as you just heard, on-air shoutouts, your name across the bottom of the video on a rolling ticker, and access to an exclusive chat room for supporters only in our Discord server. So with all that being said, it's time to kick off today's show where we're joined with Will Cloxton of Pavlov. Hope you enjoy. Hey, welcome to this episode of Ruff Talk VR. Today we're joined with another fun interview. I think these last couple months have been really interview season.
Stacked with some of the best. So,
and somehow it seems to just get better and better. I mean, today we're joined with Will Cloxton. He's of Pavlov. You know, this is one of the most popular App Lab games back in the day, predating App Lab, even being on PC VR back in the day. And then now they're coming to the official MetaQuest store. So this is a big deal.
This is huge news.
Yeah. So before I get too carried away, Will, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit more for the listeners?
Sure.
Tell them what you do with Pavlov, and also, just in case somehow they haven't heard of Pavlov, also what the hell Pavlov is.
All right, sure. I'll start with me. Will, also known as Junt in the community, do a lot of things in the background. So it's basically just trying to keep the business running. If it's not program related or art related, if it's something in office duties or business development, I'm kind of jumping in and helping out in that sense. We're a bit of a scrappy upstart, so I don't really like to claim any titles because I just do so many different random things. And I just don't want to seem all pompous about it. We're like, I help out where needed. So I help produce a little bit. Can also call me a Scrum Lord if you're into that sort of thing as a programmer. I run our QA team, hiring efforts, business development, such as launching on the MetaQuest store. So I've been in contact with Meta. When we launched on PlayStation, I was helping with the partnership on that as well. So that's sort of what I do internally. As far as Pavlov itself, Pavlov is just a PvP combat first-person shooter in VR. We like to pride ourselves in realistic weapon reloading, which is becoming more and more common. So it's not as kind of novel as it used to be. But some games still kind of go through the whole animated reload sequences. But we have sort of an eclectic mix of game modes and variety of ways to play. So It's not just team-based. You can have free-for-all, asymmetric, multiplayer, prop hunt, which is just like a really goofy game mode. But also like a social game mode like TTT, which would be sort of like almost like a murder mystery whodunit. And so, yeah, and we also have like a big modding community as well. So people can download our mod kit as well as Unreal Engine and then create content for themselves. And that's been pretty successful for us. And that's pretty much largely due to our success is the creators from the modding community.
Well, mods are huge. You look at games like Blade and Sorcery, Contractors does a great job with it as well. Mm-hmm. Even back in, for flat screen games, you look at pretty much all of Bethesda games, mods can keep a game alive for years. So that's very smart to lean into, and community love it for good reasons. They can kind of go crazy. But at this point, how big is the team? You referenced you wear many hats. So how many people are involved in Pavlov these days?
"Quote unquote" scrappy upstart.
Yes,
right. I mean, we're fully remote, so we don't have like any central offices. The company actually started growing at I don't want to say at scale, but it started growing during COVID. So there was like no point in having an office since like people couldn't come in person. So it also kind of hinders recruiting efforts when you have to ask people to kind of like move to a location and uproot their life, if they have a family. Yeah, we're fully remote. We've got 2 gameplay programmers, one lead programmer, and then a second senior programmer. And that's just the programming team. And then mostly the rest would be on art. And we have maybe about like 10 artists working full time right now on the new PC content that's coming out. And that's going to be like new maps that we've been working on. That like one of them is like one of the best, most prettiest things I've ever seen. So I'm really excited for that to come out. But anyways, so that's about the size of the team. We also have about like 10 QA testers, which we've hired from the community on a twice a week basis. We go and test the game and kind of verify bugs or address any issues with the maps as they come.
Well, that's very impressive for the quality of Pavlov and how hyped it is. And at this point, how long has the game been in development? Starting all the way back to the PC VR version.
Well, it started I want to say in like 2016. That's when the HTC Vive first came out. Our CEO Dave applied with Valve to get a headset for just like developer adoption. So they just sent him one, and he started working on content in Unreal Engine. First came a game that he made before VR, that he ported to VR. That's calling like a VR version of it. I'm going to butcher this, and everybody in the company makes fun of me for the way I pronounce it, but it's called Escalopolis. Escalopolis. It's basically an excavator that you control in a post-apocalyptic zombie world. So you have to fight zombies while you're in an excavator. And it's like the cross between excavator and apocalypse. And I just cannot combine the two words and say them with my lips. So I apologize, Dave, if you're watching. But so he started working on that game and was really happy with it, but kind of wanted to broaden his, horizons there. So he started a new game from scratch where it was just, multiplayer shooter. That's all it really had to be. And just spiraled out of that. Released it super early, let people kind of, there wasn't a lot of content out there, but a lot of people that were like really close knit in the community and thirsty for content. So they were happy to download, work in progress game and give iterative feedback and be like, oh, I wish we could do that. I wish we could do this. And so it just kept building from there. And then eventually got released to the store for a really cheap price. And then he added a modding support. And once the modding support came, it just became a viral success because people would easily be able to contribute to the game themselves. And people would see how fun it is. They would record it, post it on YouTube. That YouTube would get passed around. It would go viral. And people were like, oh, what is this? I want to play this. This is great. And so they would buy the game and then it would just keep the snowball effect going. So that's how the success of Pavlov came. And with that success, Dave wanted to do something with it. So he decided to found a studio in late 2019, started hiring sound, another senior engineer. And then I got brought along and then just started becoming like a full studio at that point.
So you've been with them about 4 years now, going on 5. So
since 2020.
Since 2020. So
yep,
that's pretty good. So was the decision to start to move to standalone VR already made by the time that you joined the company, or is that something that came a little bit later?
I mean, as soon as the original Quest came out, I think the company started working on it. I can't remember. When did the Quest 1 come out?
I feel like late 2019.
Okay.
Early 2020. I can Google it real quick. Let's see. Let me check myself on air.
I see here. So standalone development was already in the works by the time I came on board.
Okay. And the standalone VR version, at this point, it's huge in popularity, but I don't think that the reception was initially so positive. Is that correct? What was the reception like when you guys started splitting efforts between PC VR and standalone?
It's a double-edged sword because gaining a lot of players and interest, but with that comes sort of a younger audience. So there's a bit of conflict within the community when it first started happening. And of course, people on the PC side were rightfully concerned that development would halt or slow down on the PC side. And that is somewhat true for the most part because we kind of have to split our efforts going to each platform. At the core level, though, most of the core level changes will end up on both platforms, but there is some considerations and optimization specific for the Quest side or the standalone side that requires a lot more effort and thinking to kind of properly optimize it so it runs at a really smooth frame rate, which is difficult to do when you're building a game. You're trying to port something from PC to the Quest and not the other way around. If you were to target standalone first and then port it to PC, much, much easier process. But we kind of stuck to this mentality that we want to have the high quality version of the game with the best quality maps that we could possibly make with the most detail. And at the other end, we'll scale it back, optimize it. Might not look as great, but it will run. And then we'll try to pack as many Pavlov each. I didn't mean it like that. But we'll try to pack as many PC features as possible. We started with an 8-player limit, but due to our optimizations, we were able to increase that. And we've also unlocked the community service. So community server, let me roll back. We have dedicated servers that you can also run sort of like old school, first person shooter days where you can just load up Steam and just there's a list of all these community servers. We have that for Pavlov. But we've unlocked it for the Quest. So if you're responsible, you can kind of get it up to 24 players. If you cram all those 24 players into a really small space, it's not going to run that well. But if you have a very expansive map, because there's this one map, it's called Desert. But it's a very, very large desert. And since it's so expansive, you're not rendering all the players all the time. So it runs pretty great.
24 players is huge for standalone VR.
I feel like my headset would cook.
So, and I looked up. So yeah, May 2019 was the time
2019 felt right.
Quest 1 dropped. Yeah, that was my initial gut. So, the whole team has really grown in skill as the Quest has grown as well, both in hardware and just technical knowledge of it. People had to learn how to actually, optimize and use this thing. So take us back to, when the game first, goes to standalone VR to now. What were some of the challenges and, things that you all had to get running good in order to make it to the official store like you're about to be?
Right. So one of the difficulties was the current engine version that we were on when we were porting to standalone was not and that was a pre-Quest engine. So a lot of the optimizations and really good, like, basically Oculus produces like their own kind of version of the engine that you can kind of implement for your own game. Well, we didn't have access to that. We had to basically take that and then backport features. So that made things really difficult. But we were on an older version of the engine, which had these really core level bugs that we could not address until we upgraded. So the biggest like pain that we've ever experienced was last year trying to upgrade the engine. And we had to do that because, well, if we wanted to be on PlayStation VR 2, we had to be at least on 4.26 and above. So that was a requirement flat out. But that's not the whole reason why we upgraded the engine. We thought, like, in hindsight, I don't know if we would have taken the direction a little bit differently, but the idea being, we have our modders. We thought they would be really excited about being on Unreal 5. We were excited about being on Unreal 5. And so we just jumped all in. Let's just upgrade the engine. We're going to lose, some of the older mod content, but hopefully we can ask them to kind of port that content over. For the most part, it's a pretty easy, painless process. But if you have a really complex mod that does a lot of different functionalities, might take a little bit of fixing to get it working again. But each step of the way in the engine upgrade, whether that be just we were forced to go to chaos physics, we were forced to go to OpenXR, so we had to change all the protocols. Of course, when we moved to OpenXR, the gun angles are different. So we had to go through each and every PC controller that exists and adjust the gun angles and try to get all the input to work again. And that was not fun. Moving to chaos wasn't fun. We had some issue where if you had collision with a plane, just items would fall through. If you applied a certain type of collision to it, like a simple collision on a plane, I think it took a lot of issues with, like colliding with objects. So we had to redo all our maps and all our collisions to make sure that objects wouldn't fall through. And the vehicles with chaos wasn't great as well. It's not as optimized as PhysX was. So it was just a big mess. And it was probably the most painful thing we've ever done professionally. And we finally got it out. But we did a lot to fix the game, but it was hard to justify how much changed from content wise, how much changed from the old version to the new version, despite the laundry list of bugs that we were able to solve. So that was really, really painful.
How long did that all take to fully
about a year
over? About a year?
Yep.
Wow.
And so if you can imagine, as a player, you have a game that hasn't had a year of updates. It's easy to assume, devs abandon it or don't care. Mm-hmm. They've moved on. That wasn't the case. It was a really big struggle for us.
Well, you're also not a AAA studio with 100 employees working on it. You said,
get it fixed in 12 hours.
Yeah, scrappy startup. That was your working
right.
of it, and it takes a lot of man hours. And if you don't have the biggest team, it's still the same amount of hours. It's just less people working on those hours to chip it away. So it's totally understandable.
Right. If you kind of keep in mind that when they published Unreal Engine 5, not many games were in VR on Unreal Engine 5. So we're finding these system level issues that we have to contact Epic about and ask them to fix and address. And, being a small studio, they tend to not really pay too much attention to you, especially when you're in the VR kind of niche genre. They're just like, oh, VR, we'll deal with you later. We've got AAA we have to worry about with our new engine, which is totally fine. It's an economic decision. But we have some developers that almost deserve an engine contributor badge on their Unreal profiles because of how many things we've submitted and had to get addressed.
That's huge. I mean, cutting edge, you guys were some of the first on on App Lab, leader before App Lab. Like I said, I remember when I got my Quest 2, App Lab didn't exist yet. And all I was seeing on Reddit was you got to go enable developer mode and sideload Pavlov.
Yeah, you couldn't avoid hearing, especially if you were looking for shit to play. I mean,
and it was mainly due to, you know, the physics of it, the gunplay, the realistic gun reloading mechanics. People went crazy for that.
We had fun.
Yeah, way back in the day. So now to see it launching on the official MetaQuest stores is huge, and it's available for pre-order now. I guess just to hype it up a little bit. If somebody pre-orders, what do they get for pre-ordering as a bonus currently?
Well, you get 25% off. That should be incentive enough. If you've liked the game, you know, that's your demo. You get a demo for 2 years, the full game. Like that should be incentive. If you like the game, $15, not a big deal. But we're also including cosmetics. So if you pre-order, you're going to get 5 gun skins, 4 of which will be available for purchase later, but one of them will only be exclusive to the actual pre-orders, pre-order folks. If I should say that, the pre-order, they'll get an animated shotgun that we call it circuit. So it's like a glowing circuit board that kind of moves around the traces. That's pretty cool.
I'm a sucker for
$14 or $15 is not
after
not
pre-order,
price,
and it's $20 regularly. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
$20 once we launch, $15 for a pre-order.
And I'm a sucker for exclusive. If I hear the only time I'm ever going to be able to get it is now, I'm probably going to go now with it. And at launch, you know, how many game modes are there for players to explore? I know we talked about them a little bit at the start, but you know, what can a player who's even ever played Pavlov before, what can they expect when they load in to the official Quest version?
What you should definitely play the tutorial. One thing that was a problem was players not playing the tutorial, and they would jump in, get confused, and probably get spanked in a lot of ways. But we'll prompt you to play the tutorial, and that should definitely be the first thing that you do. Second thing you do, I would highly suggest that you play some of the more casual deathmatch game modes, team deathmatch, just to kind of get used to the weapons. But after that, you can start really getting into the weeds of like competitive S&D. And that's sort of search and destroy, plant the bomb, defuse the bomb, defend, attack. That's the bread and butter of Pavlov, right? And since then, we've kind of expanded to other game modes. There's like one in the chamber, gun game. We've added World War II. So there's World War II weapons and modern weapons. So we've got 2 different eras to play with. And since then, we've also added push, which is sort of, you know, I guess if you could think of it as like a rush on Battlefield. So it's sort of in that sense where you have to capture several control points in order to kind of progress your team to win. But we also have like things like, you know, zombie waves. So you can play co-op with, you know, 4 friends and then shoot a wave of incoming zombies. We have prop hunt. Prop hunt is basically like hide and seek, where you can disguise as an object or an item in the map, and you have to kind of blend yourself in with the other props. And the other team has to go and hunt down those props. But if you shoot a prop that's not a player, your health goes down a little bit. So it takes a little bit of memorization and keen eye to kind of figure out, like, you know, who's
so
what.
There's like, you can kind of tell, like, can you like see feet or something like that sticking? Like,
No.
I've seen prop hunts in other games. They're freaking. They look really cool. So I'm excited that this is going to be coming.
Yeah, how's it work in Pavlov? How can you tell that it's a real player?
So you either have to recognize the map and be like, hey, that thing's out of place, or you notice that a prop is not properly, you know, it's like, that doesn't make sense to be there. What is that doing there? And you kind of like,
it's the worst time ever to get stick drift. You're trying to be a tree or something, and then your controller.
Well, no, you can lock yourself in place, so that's okay.
It's genius. That makes sense. So sorry,
yeah,
I didn't mean to cut you off.
You can lock yourself in place so you can kind of move about freely, but keep your prop locked down so that it doesn't, like, you know, give away your position. But there's also taunts that kind of help the hunters. So there's automated taunts that come out, but you can manually press the taunts and it'll kind of make them shout certain lines and dialogue to kind of give the hunters a little bit more clues as to where they are.
Oh, that
I'm
mode sounds
wicked
fun.
excited for this, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And what other game modes too?
Okay, so we've got the hide, which is basically an asymmetrical one versus all sort of style of game mode. You basically have a monster that has abilities to kind of use thermal vision to see through walls. They have blades for arms, but they can also jump and fly and attach to walls and hold on to them. And they're also a little bit invisible and very transparent. The more movement they have, the more opaque you get. But so you can kind of sneak your way around and try to eliminate everybody in the map. Or you can hunt down the monster and try to neutralize them before they kill the rest of your team. But we also have a derivative of that, which is called infection, which is pretty much the same thing, except for if you die, you become infected and you respawn as the monster and you have to go and kill for the other team. There is no invisibility in that one, but you have access to the buy menu, buy like grenades and items.
That's a shit ton of game modes.
Oh my
And
God,
King of the Hill, one in the
15
chamber.
bucks.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in there.
So you all went through the classics. You said we'll hit all of the, search and destroy, which is my
It's like
personal favorite.
every genre. I heard Battlefield mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Team Deathmatch, and then King of the Hill. But then you got some really cool and innovative ones as well. So I'm really excited for that. But you mentioned search and destroy is kind of like the bread and butter. Is that the most popular game mode as well in terms of like player base?
It's one of the most popular. TTT is extremely popular just because it's so social. And social interaction in VR is way more empowering than just, mouse and keyboard. So it tends to be a really popular game mode, but it's kind of hard to quantify which one's more popular than the other. But if it's not TTT, it's definitely search and destroy. Because that's where like our balance is tailored around. So we have all these different game modes and ways to play. It's really hard to balance for all of them. Just kind of all these different damage systems and trying to kind of quantify not interactions, but encounters and trying to kind of think about how an encounter would go down, either one-on-one or one with a group. So there's all these weird dynamics and considerations that have to be taken into play. So we just kind of put our foot down and said, it's search and destroy. This is what everything's going to be centered around. That is different for World War II because World War II doesn't have search and destroy. It also doesn't have armor. So that has a slightly different game balance feel to it as well, which is kind of great because if one thing that people complain about with Pavlov is we have a high TTK. Just to go back to kind of like how we want encounters to happen. That's a purposeful thing. If you're kind of running and somebody gets the drop on you from behind and you're instantly dead, it's not a really fun experience. And if you're into that type of gameplay where everything's very realistic and easy to kill, that totally makes sense. But we find it more interesting to be able to turn around and respond to a threat after you've been damaged. And you can have volleys back and forth, either hiding behind cover or if you got great enough aim, you could just go right for the head. But we want to have back and forth, volleys of bullet fire just so that it remains really interesting and interactive.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that style of gameplay. It's different than you get popped, and I'm thinking the old Counter-Strike days. I mean, one shot, one kill. I mean, it's over. But so I don't mind giving the other person at least a fair chance to make you think twice about how you play it. But I'm really blown away about all the game modes.
Oh my God, that's
not even
huge.
It's really not even funny.
But that also shows Pavlov has a huge player base, and at this point, it's going to be on, like I keep saying, the official MetaQuest store. You said PlayStation VR 2. Obviously, there's the PC VR following. How does crossplay work? Does Quest only play with Quest, or is it all crossplay with each other?
We have PSVR 2 crossplay with PC right now. Reason being is like the fidelity of assets that we have. We would have to take out and remove and downgrade the maps on PC and PSVR 2 if we wanted to allow crossplay. Otherwise, we would have maps where there would be props that didn't exist on the other version. So if you can imagine like a wall with a shelf and there's a whole bunch of like props on it, like say an oil barrel, some crates, and we had to reduce that amount, then you would have, crates on one platform and then no crates on another platform. And they get, that's not very good. So we just didn't want to compromise the PC experience, the PlayStation experience. So there is no crossplay. Comes with a lot of caveats. It's really difficult for friends to play with each other, and we totally understand that. And it would help with population as well. But it's just one of those things that, we made a decision on and we stuck to it.
Understood.
No, the trade-off's not worth it. And I'd be bummed if I was playing with someone and they were talking about all this cool shit they see, and I'm like, no, I don't have that, So I totally get, especially in a game like this.
Yeah, I get it. It's like you said, catch-22. There's
prop hunt would be no fun.
Yeah. And you mentioned, avatar cosmetics. So how does that work in the game? Do you unlock cosmetics for your avatar by continuing to play? Do you buy them? How does all that work?
So we're not going to have the cosmetic store at launch, but that is something that will come in a post patch. You'll be granted the skins, of course, but you won't be able to buy more. So that's something that we're still working on. But to answer your question, as far as unlocks, we might have a few unlocks, like such as completing the tutorial. Like we want to encourage people to do that, so we'll give them a really funny gun for doing that. But as far as like ongoing progression system and unlocks with cosmetics, not something we currently have in the works. We're kind of just thinking like a direct, you see a piece of artwork that you want on your gun, you purchase it for reasonable amount of money, and then you just get that. We're not going to do an economy. We don't want to get into the weeds of, having to deal with scammers and people getting ripped off, trying to trade rare guns, but then kind of pulling the rug from under them and, basically running away with their money. Not something that we're currently interested in, nor do we have the manpower to kind of handle an economy of that scale. So not something we're going to do, nor are we going to do like crate unlocks or anything like that, because there's a lot of kind of weird morality things you kind of have to take into consideration, especially when you have a younger player base.
Don't want to incentivize gambling.
Right. And we just don't want to do that. We don't want to turn a game into like a commodity trade platform.
No, that makes sense.
So
I can see it.
But we're kind of just the way we're looking at it. It's like what you see is what you get. You want to spend $2 on this gun skin, you can have it.
But you think back to our Pop 1 days for a while. Me and him were into Pop, and we were very into buying skins and gun skins.
They pumped out good ones, and so it was hard to say no. And the prices were pretty reasonable.
Yeah, at least in the beginning.
Like,
now not so much. So that was an important caveat. You said a reasonable amount, and I'm the type of person I don't mind to buy it. I know it gives me an aesthetic, but I also know it supports the developer, so I always felt good doing it as well. Especially knowing most VR studios aren't exactly the biggest and stuff like that. And then beyond, a cosmetic store down the line, is there plans internally for like DLC content and bundles and stuff like that? Or do you plan to keep it just, people who buy the base game, they have everything, and besides, some optional cosmetics and stuff like that?
Right. We don't really have plans for DLC. Your DLC is the mod kit, and that will produce content far faster than we ever could. So, and there's already so much in Mod.io right now in the store, and we haven't even launched in the store yet. We're still in beta. But we recently pushed an update, and that includes our new mod kit. We're calling it 3.0. And that has a lot of drastic implications down the line of what's going to be possible and what you can do with mods, as well as creating your own community if you have your own dedicated server. You can stack mods on top of each other. So you could take a gun pack that somebody made custom weapons for. You can take that, add it in. You can take somebody else's gun pack and add it in, have them work together. Somebody made a custom helicopter. Oh, you can take that in. You can throw that in as well. And there's a custom game mode over here. It's, random weapon on death. So you can take that one and install it. We've had it in our tests, we've had 15 mods installed on one server, and they didn't conflict with each other, and it ran just fine.
It's freaking amazing.
Yeah. That's the benefit of being on early access and beta for so long. Dude. you launch on Quest Store, like you said, the day you launch, there's already mods available for it. That's huge. And for yourself, working in the studio, do you have a favorite game mode or a favorite loadout to use?
My favorite game mode is Team Deathmatch. I know it sounds kind of lame, but when I've had a rough day at work, or this is before I was working at Pavlov. I still love working at Pavlov. But when I first started playing, when I had a rough day at work, all I ever wanted to do was just kind of turn off my brain and just casually run around and shoot people. I personally don't get into the competitive side. It just puts this aggression in me that I really don't like to kind of adds on the stress that I'm trying to get rid of. When I'm just oh, why can't I win? And, you start cursing. And so I try to avoid going super competitive in a lot of ways. But that's just me personally. Not my personality type, but yeah. So Team Deathmatch, favorite weapon, it's got to be the M4, of course. I'm not quite a great shot, so I can't click heads like some of the AK people can. So M4, that's me and my loadout. Might also be controversial, but I really like using the 5.7 pistol. One of my favorite things to do is play Team Deathmatch and just buy a 5.7 and a suppressor. And then I'll just sneak around and try to act like I'm James Bond, crouch and pop up on people and try to, kill them really quietly or just stab them so that, I'm not making any noise. It's just a totally self-imposed, I'm playing stealth right now in this in this PvP game. So I like doing that play style sometimes. It's really funny, especially when you get the drop on someone, and since there's proximity chat, you say something to them with your microphone before they have a chance to turn around. You can just or something. It's really funny.
Night. Stab, stab, stab.
Exactly.
Stabby, stabby, stab. That's hilarious.
Be like, hey man, you dropped this, and then you drop a grenade on the ground and just stab.
So, stepping from away from Pavlov for a second, let's going to you. How did you discover virtual reality and, more importantly, Pavlov?
I've always been a VR guy. So we're going back to the 90s now at this point, because there was fervor in the VR industry, in the gaming industry, that VR is going to be the next new thing with all these virtual worlds, and the internet's just coming out and 3D games. So I don't know if y'all are familiar with the Virtuality arcade system, but it's basically a pod that you can sit in, or they had a stand-up version. One of the games that was really popular was called Dactyl Nightmare, but they had a whole bunch of other kind of titles for it as well. So it was 1995 or something like that, and I saw it in the mall. I begged my mom to let me play it, and despite how garbage it was in hindsight, I still loved it. It was still the best thing ever. I didn't really get headaches or anything like that, but I was a young little kid, so it's really hard to kind of mess with their vestibular system, I would have to assume, because I didn't really get sick off it. But that just really stuck with me. And I don't know if you'll remember, there was a clone Power Rangers TV show called VR Troopers, and I was all about watching the VR Troopers as well. Basically Power Rangers, but just VR instead of transforming into big giant robots or dinosaur robots. So that really kind of stuck with me at a really, really early age. And it always remained one of those things, because it really died off. And I was what could have been? And it's man, it'd be so cool if this would ever come back. But it's just always just a distant memory thing. But then John Carmack and Palmer Luckey presented to the world the Oculus dev kit. I was this is what we're doing. And it just kind of spread like wildfire, and there was so much hype and speculation around it. So once it reached me, I was oh my God, VR's back. I can't wait. And so that's kind of been me ever since. Is it finally came out. It's better than ever. There's more games than ever, more content. And so I just dove right in, and it's been that since.
So at what point did you go from a consumer to working in it professionally? Was working with the studio in 2019 your first endeavor into the professional side of VR, or
Yes.
were you already?
I was working in the trade show industry before that, so not related to the gaming industry at all. But I lost my job because of COVID, because of the trade show industry, and Dave asked if I could help him out with a few things here and there, specifically like towards the community. So I was originally hired on as a community manager to help write copy for the posts that go up on Steam. Or anything or managing the Discord and just kind of tailoring, responding to players and just communicating. But ever since then, I've just had more roles come on and more responsibilities kind of put onto my responsibility list or shoulders yeah.
So were you a Pavlov player prior to
Yes.
working there? I take it. Were you a big part of the community just as a top ranked player? How did you?
No,
meet
not
Dave
even close to top ranked. I knew a few people. I wasn't like Mr. Popular or anything like that. But I was really involved in the community. Our competitive community is very, very dedicated. But I wasn't in those circles. So I was just like a casual player that liked to kind of participate, get involved and see what's coming up and what's going on. And so I was constantly in the Discord and chatting with people and answering questions, asking questions. And then, it's just weird how fate happens. About half our studio is hired from within the community. Our senior programmer, our 2 gameplay programmers were hired from within the modding community. Couple of artists, and so we like to kind of embrace people that create and see what we can do to kind of foster that and make it just blossom.
Picking from the community is probably one of the best ways for recruitment, because you've got a full text resume in most cases of what that person is and what they're.
Well, they're passionate too. They like the product.
Well, there's negative passion that we've seen go down, and
of course, but we've seen it a couple other games. Some of the best games pick internally from the community, and it shows.
No, it makes sense. It's it's all there. There's no non full disclosure. You've been talking in a channel for months and months or whatever. Or you're one of those suggestive people who, and maybe you have all your suggestions are great. Why wouldn't you?
And then internally from there, it's like the ideas you bring forth, it's going to be because you love the game, because you play it, and it's because you genuinely think it'll be better. So I love that system of picking from the community.
No forced going to work there.
But from Will to Junt, so I got to ask, how did the community, or the name for the community, that you go by, Junt, how did that come to be?
Right. It's short for Juntistic. It's really just a word invented so it wouldn't be registered on every form that I went to online. That's it.
I always love to ask, how people got their usernames, and it's never something dramatic. Huge. No, it's always just something. It's you picked it, but I mean, I can even see that for us, D Scruffles and Stratus, it was just kind of quick, D Scruffles. If I really sat and thought of it,
I played with my full username on Xbox, but then I learned people can't pronounce Juntistic, so they would just call it like Juntistic or Juntstick, and I'm just like, all right. Well, people started calling me Junt anyway, so I just shortened it to Junt. But that's registered in a lot more things, apparently.
And you quickly referenced competitive side of the community. So inside, for Pavlov on the Discord or whatever, is there leagues, tournaments, that type of thing?
Oh yeah, there's several leagues actually. There's PCL, Pavlov Champions League, VRML, VR Master League. There's one for PlayStation, Pavlov Fight Club, so PFC. So those are the 3 main leagues that are kind of, active right now.
I love that name, Pavlov Fight Club. So if somebody buys Pavlov on the MetaQuest, they they love it, and then they want to start exploring that side of things. Is that info that they can find on the Pavlov Discord? What steps would you say somebody who wants to get more into the competitive side?
If you're on mobile, you probably want to be with Pavlov Fight Club, VRML, and I'm sorry. Hold on one second. I'm trying to make sure that I don't mess these up, and I apologize to anybody part of those. So you want to be with PCL, Pavlov Champions League, if you want to be on mobile. If you want to be on PlayStation or PC, it's going to be VRML or Pavlov Fight Club.
Understood. And is info of these like kind of available on the Discord as well? Or is that something that they would go to those individual leagues' websites and stuff like that?
You should be able to. We try to curtail advertising communities too much because everybody and their dog wants to kind of start up their own thing. And you don't want to just have a channel where it's everybody's just trying to recruit for their one specific cause that what they wanted to start up. It's really difficult to kind of walk that balance because we want you to kind of be successful and in your endeavors, but if it takes you 5 minutes to create a Discord and say I want to create my own league, let me advertise it now. You just got 100 different leagues and 100 different communities, so we try to limit how much we kind of show, but we have 2 channels that are very useful. One is called regional communities. So if you're in a specific region, like say Iceland or something like specific to your own native language, like German, there's specific German communities that you can join, or Icelandic communities, Norwegian, and you can do that to find players that are more closer to your region. A, for a better ping, but B, you can speak in your native language and communication's a lot better. But we also have a community events channel. And that's something for people doing time and dated kind of events like, hey, we're doing this Halloween event. We're going to play scary maps. Come and join. So we have that. And a lot of the league matches get announced there to either watch or there's always information to join and play as well. So you can also Google it. Pavlov Champions League. You're going to get something.
Well, again, it's a very vocal community, so I'm sure you'll find no shortage of posts and info and everything like that. And for somebody just going in the game, do you have any tips for a new player? I know you referenced, play the tutorial. That should always be number one. But in terms of just general gameplay habits, for somebody getting used to Pavlov, what's something that they should keep in mind?
Okay.
Obviously, there's proximity chat, so don't go singing while you're playing.
Mm-mm.
The settings are your friend. There's a lot of cool things in the settings. One of which you should all I wish it was a default. Maybe I could, bug our programmer to make it a default setting. But one is auto sprint, so that when you put your gun down, you automatically start sprinting instead of having to click in your left trigger. A lot of people prefer that because they don't want to keep ruining their triggers with stick drift being an issue. Why is stick drift an issue? In past 3 generations, I never had a problem. Have you ever had an Xbox controller with stick drift? I never had it. And now my Index and my Oculus controllers are just drifting all of a sudden. What is with that? Anyways, I digress. I'm starting to sound like Jerry Seinfeld. What is the deal with joysticks? But
you click them all the time, and
right. If you have a hard time with aiming very far distances, we have a virtual stock, and if you can imagine what a real stock is, it's something to put a brace on your shoulder. So we have a virtual stock, which kind of puts a fake anchor on your shoulder, and it makes it easier to kind of steady your aim a bit and fire in further distances. Some drawbacks to it though, for very close encounters, you can't kind of whip your hands as nimbly as you would with the virtual stock off. But that's another helpful tip as well. But also go into the shooting ranges, learn the weapons. They're all unique in kind of how they operate. Some of them you can drop the magazine with the button. Others you have to physically pull it out with your hand. It just depends on the design of the weapon. We try to match it as close to how it would feel in real life as possible. But gameplay balance and artistic liberties must be taken just so that we're not putting ourselves in sort of a copyright law. That's why we use the real gun names inside the game files. We kind of, we call it a sock instead of a Glock, because we just don't want to get into those territories of being sued for using weapon manufacturer designs in our games. So a lot of people that are like really hardcore like gun nerds, they'll be like, I don't understand the design of this weapon. It's like they took two different platforms and kind of jammed them together to make this one thing that never existed. And it's like, yeah, you're right. That's exactly what we did. And we did that for like, because we don't want to do a one-to-one copy of something and get sued for it, which has happened. A lot of games do, they get away with it. It's not a problem, but we still don't want to kind of put ourselves at any kind of legal risk. So, yeah.
Understood.
I've seen many a car game do it where they're not using, Toyotas and Ferraris, because
that's how Grand Theft Auto always did it,
Yeah. I mean, otherwise you're paying huge, which I don't really understand, because if anything, you're just advertising shit for free. So why should you sue me for it?
Yeah, Call of Duty had a lawsuit with Hummer over the Humvee, or was it GM Motors? But they were using the Humvee in Call of Duty. They called it a Humvee. It was labeled a Humvee. And so they got sued for it. They ended up winning, but my God, their lawyer costs had to have been through the roof, which is something they could personally take off, but not something like scrappy upstart.
Oh, yeah. And you got to assume if you can't afford that caliber of attorney to fight that fight, you're doomed.
And then it does allow you, like you said, some artistic liberty where you go, hey, it doesn't have to be exactly how that gun is, because it's not that gun, so there's pros and cons both ways. So I totally get that side of things. And then I got one more question I'm dying to ask, and then I'll pass it to you if you have anything else you want to ask too. But, you mentioned mods are a pretty big part of the community and the game itself. Do you have a favorite mod?
Oh, right now, it's going to be a split between Escape from Pavlov, which is on PC right now, and that's kind of like a Tarkov inspired. I forgot what genre they call that.
Like extraction survival.
Extraction, right? So it's like an extraction mod, and then there's on the quest side there's Pavlov Kart, which uses our vehicles, but they've made like a kart racer out of it where you can drive over items and then you'll pick up those items and you can use them as weapons and kind of use that to for the people in front or behind you.
Like Twisted Metal meets Mario Kart.
Well, mostly Mario Kart. So it's still a race. You're going around a track. It's not much of an arena. And it's funny because if you go off a ramp, you get the Mario Kart like hang glider on there, and then you kind of just float your vehicle all the way down. It's really clever. I love the way Coda set it up.
You got to give modders so much credit.
Every once in a while, there's some games that like I know PC VR people have, and I'm actually jealous about just because I want to see the best of like what a game has to offer. And this is one of those games on that list. Like, it's like I'm so happy I'll have it on coming to the official store, be able to play it on the Quest 3, but I'm still going to be jealous of the PC play 1,000,000%, because I know they're just getting a.
Well, I'm sure the PC VR community will love to know they're not abandoned. They're still their game's not getting downgraded for the Quest. I know sometimes that upsets the PC VR crowd, so
they have passion.
It's good that you're catering to both. You're hitting all the markets. So
I can't stress enough like how awesome this new mod kit's going to be. There's a lot of issues that people have that they encounter with specifically the current mod kit, but you can break apart all your content into separate IDs. Like, for example, you could just take all your map assets as one big download pack and then just make that its own standalone package. But then you can build the level with those assets and then ship the level separately, and they'll combine and just make the level with the assets. So you can theoretically take one pack of assets and build 10 levels of it, and it's going to be the download size of just those assets, and you have 10 levels. So it reduces dramatically on the cost of storage. But at the same time, if you're making a very marginal change in a map, you're not having to recompile all the dang assets all over again. You're just compiling the level and shipping it that way. So it should like really improve the workflow for a lot of people. But what's also really interesting is you could have somebody make a mod and you can install that mod in your map as a dependency. And there's nothing you have to do other than kind of, if you need to spawn it with item IDs, you have to implement the custom item IDs. But if they update their mod, it's going to automatically update for yours. So you don't have to like share content between people anymore and like zip up files and plugins and send them that way. They can just upload the mod with a new update and then automatically applies to your content. It's really cool.
That's huge. That's huge. Game changer, literally. No pun intended.
Yeah, so. And it's like a really hard thing to kind of like express in marketing. So it's not something that we're being specifically loud about right now. Of course, we've got it out for the Quest. That's kind of like we're testing the waters, see how people react and use it. Make sure there's not abusive things that are on there, because surely that there could be some really weird things that people do, like I don't know, just like block access to the menu so you can't quit the game. Things like that. So we're kind of treading water right now, seeing how people are reacting to it, and then we're going to make this big splash PC, because that's where the majority of people are. Because if you're on VR and you have a gaming computer and you're making maps, you're typically going to play the PC version. So although we have seen a lot of content show up on the Shack side, it's much more explosive on the PC side, of course.
I just can't believe that mod stacking will work harmonically with each other. And if one updates it, it's going to automatically update the...
Yeah, no, that's huge. Huge. It's one of those things
the versioning control is so
like you
awesome.
Said, it's not something you'll market to new players. Oh my God, we got this new modding. They're probably not going to care. But for the people that they're modders, that's, again, night and day. So I'm excited for that.
If you're just an average player, just hop in the game and just pick a server and play it, that just enjoy it that way. But if you're a modder, like get really excited, join our Discord, ask questions, because there's a little bit of complexity involved in trying to kind of like understand the differences of what's new and what's old. You can still do everything, the workflow, the old way. It's just like you're kind of hindering yourself if you're not really aware of like the changes and what you can kind of do to make it better, and make it like painless, I think would be the correct term. Just love to interact with people. We've got other people that are kind of more familiar with the new mod kit, because we kind of did this internal test with some of the prolific modders, and they kind of gave us feedback, and we kind of did this iteration loop to continue to improve it. And we feel like we're in a really good place. So we're really excited to get this out into the world. But we also have the new content that's coming out for PC and PSVR too, because they're kind of like tied at the hip with each other. You update one, you have to update the other. So we got that coming up, and we're really excited to get one of the most pretty maps that we've ever made out, or at least in my opinion. Two of them, actually, both of them the most pretty.
I'm excited.
With a lot of jokes as well.
You'd be excited if you were a PC player.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for this official MetaQuest launch too.
In my world, that's...
And what day of the month is this?
When we launch on Quest, it's going to be November 14th.
So
right around the corner.
Yeah, pre-order it now, 25% off, $15 for
Get at
Pavlov.
least one exclusive thing.
15% or $15 for Pavlov is insane.
I honestly,
insane.
Well,
it's a steal. It really is
beyond a steal.
Yeah, I thought in my head it was going to be the $19.99 to $24.99, like kind of within that range. I didn't expect.
Well, $15 for pre-order, $20 regular.
I don't care,
but
pre-order or not. It says $14.99.
Yeah,
that's
and oftentimes for pre-order,
way under what I personally evaluated.
Yeah, and I've seen 10% off for pre-order and stuff. So 25% off is good. It matches that referral code that sometimes people wait for. Yep. So there's no point in waiting for the referral code. You get the same amount and aesthetic. So just pre-order now.
Meta told this was their deepest pre-order discount they've ever done.
That sounds right. Like I said, 25% off. But you got to match that referral code. I can't stress that enough. Otherwise, people won't take advantage of it. So that's huge.
Well, if the developer at the end of the day has to take the hit for all the people who post the referral code, then they might as well do it themselves.
Yeah, 100%. And then again, there's no point in waiting for the 25% if you already get 25% and items. So that's huge.
So here's the question: if a developer does the 25% reduction, does it work as a referral code and they get a little kickback for each?
No, unfortunately,
each
I don't
one
think that'll be the
purchased.
I wish.
Aside from the normal
extra
deal,
$5 kickback each time. That's funny.
I wish.
right? Oh, that'd be genius.
So I can't stress enough. If you like shooters, if you played the version on App Lab before, go pre-order now. $15 is a steal, coming out November 14th this month on the official MetaQuest store. So
Just
that's
over
huge.
a week away.
And then before we I'm pumped. This is gonna be a big one.
Yeah.
Before we let Will go, is there anything else you want to ask him? Anything that I don't want to end this thing and we go, frick, we should have asked him.
There'll always be one thing for sure. No,
but that just means we got to get him back in the future.
I was
be more than happy to come back.
I was one of the people who maybe a while ago thought maybe what I had played was going to be the last I ever got to play of it. I didn't know the full extent, but to hear everything that's in this, it's like the replayability value is skyrocketing.
Mm-hmm.
Can't wait to get my hands on it. I think we covered all the bases.
Yeah, we'll have to talk in a couple months.
There's just so much that it's like, I want to play it. I want to do all the different modes. I want to come to my own opinion on. But I played a long time ago was good. We had fun.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see this full launch. I'm excited to see the reception.
I want to do the prop hunt, dude. Really bad.
I went to the top selling list on the MetaQuest store yesterday because sometimes I like to do that, and I saw Pavlov on there. It wasn't top 5, but it was on the page of top selling. I'm like, and it's pre-order only. So I think that this is going to be a great launch. Good luck to everyone, but I don't think you need it.
Going to be nice.
So
We're really excited for it. Yeah,
it's well deserved. Again, this is one of the top App Lab games. It's definitely probably better that it waited till now, till it's in the state it is, performance wise, also feature wise.
Well, when you see how much is in it,
if you've not played Pavlov in quite a while, the difference in mobile is drastic. Absolutely drastic.
I think this is going to be a big hit. So thanks for taking the time, getting our listeners
thanks for having me.
Hopefully, but more importantly, you got me hyped. Like I'm excited to go hop in Pavlov. So
1,000,000%. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, if you ever want to play, hit me up. I'll join.
Yeah, I can get James Bond killed over and over.
Yeah,
again.
we already know the play style. You're gonna get.
Yeah, you're gonna let us pick any gun. Back. Yeah, he's gonna go over there with knives and kill us all, but it'll still be fun. So.
I'm not a master player by any stretch of the imagination. Like I get spanked all the time.
You will be in comparison to I promise.
Okay.
So, but it'll be a fun time. It'll be a fun time. So we'll have to do it.
To do that.
So again, thank you for taking the time, Will. To the listeners, go pre-order Pavlov. It's small team. They deserve it.
It's a great
go support.
Price. Again, unless you were absent during the announcement of what's coming with it, then
a lot of content. Definitely $15 worth.
Cut that in half and it's worth $15.
Support a great dev studio. And Will, hopefully we can have you back again. To the listeners, subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and enjoy the rest of your day. I think we got one more coming later this week too, so stay tuned.
Take care.